folks, Evil DM here. Another episode of Let's Talk, Let's Learn the System for Meg's DC Heroes. This is part 2 of damage. This one's going to cover medicine skill, resting, and desperation recovery. First things first, if you head over to page 77 of the 3rd edition book, there is a medicine skill that has a bunch of things in that would probably apply to during combat. Otherwise, it's really out of combat. You want it during combat. But it has 4 sub-skills to the medicine skill. First aid, which can be done unskilled. Forensics doesn't really apply to this situation at all. Medical treatment kind of applies. And surgery, don't really use it. It does apply somewhat. Just don't use it because it's not something that's done in game, at least from my point of view. Unless you really want to get into that with your players, sure you can, but I think it's kind of dull, and I've never found a player that wants to deal with it. They just kind of want to do a hand wave roll. If you're at the point of becoming surgeon in a surgery, you just kind of want to do a basic roll and everybody, walks through it. But first aid can be done unskilled. Now, a skill that is used like unskilled or untrained, so to speak, if you want to use D&D D20 rules, you can do it. You have to substitute the linked attribute to that's your stat, what you're rolling on for the effective value, and you also get penalized by 2 column shifts to the right, and you have to beat that number. So if you were looking at a 7 and the damage was say a 6, you had to roll a 9, you'd have to now roll a 13 because you're moving 2 columns forward, because that's how you do it. First aid does not heal. It only stops bleeding. So what you do for this is you take your medicine skill number and you put it on the acting value row. It's also counted for the affecting value row versus the current damage the person is suffering for the opposing value and the resistant value. The number you get after all said and done is how long you hold off the bleeding for until it reopens and the person starts bleeding out again, 8 APs of time or 15 minutes of game time. So in an example, let's switch over to another chart so we can take a peek at this and you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, there we are. So in my example here, let's just say we have an 11. Oh, there we go. We have an 11 medicine skill. Our acting value right here is 11, as you can see. Now, the damage done to, let's just say, a colleague or a foe, we want to try to save them, is 7, which is over here. Whoop. 7 right there. So we're going to cross-reference and see that we need to roll a 7. Now, let's just say I rolled and I got a 12. Okay, so we're going to count. No, 9, 12 beats 9, beats 11, 13, no. So that's 1, 2 column shifts. Okay, remember that, 2 column shifts. We head on over to the results table, and we go back to our 11 right here, as you can see. We cross-reference that with our 7 again, and we see we get 6, but we have 2 column shifts, so we move to the left, 7, 2, 9. So that means we have 9 APs worth of time before the damage starts happening again. Now, if we check our time chart here, 9, we have 32 minutes of time in-game before it starts opening up and bleeding again. Pretty simple. Medical treatment does work the same way, but you're allowed to treat not only just body or physical damage, you can treat mental damage for the mind and supposedly spiritual damage, but there's no rule listing in there, even though it does say you can do it. So that was kind of a boo-boo, or maybe they forgot to write it in. Unsure. So you can just follow it along and allow it to happen, or just not let it happen. It's up to you as the GM what you want to do. But it's done the same way, and for physical damage, it can only be done once a day. It can't be done like first aid as much as you really want. It also needs special equipment to do it as well. And for treating the mind, that can only be done once a week. Now, surgery is a whole different story and a whole different thing that has to be done. Again, I don't use it, and it doesn't really apply to the situation here, but you have to be trained to use it, much like the medical treatment. It can only be done once per day, and special equipment and time is needed to perform the procedure. If you're at that point in your game that you're going to do all of that, then good on you, man. I don't want to waste the time and story with that because I don't want to bore my characters with that. I mean, my players with that. And maybe you'll find it interesting, cool, but I've never run into a player that wants to deal with doing the surgery feat. Surgery feat, I said feat. Skill. Okay. So let's look at resting recovery. Resting recovery, okay. You automatically receive this check after some time passes since your character was last damaged. Think of it as a natural healing ability of your body, mind, and spirit. Everybody heals over time, different ways and different hows, whatever. But once an hour, you will get to roll to check to see if you heal. Bashing combat is resolved, like I said, once an hour or 10 APs of game time. Killing combat damage, though, is different. That's handled once every 24 hours or 15 APs of game time. Characters recover each one separately, so you have to make a roll for each one of them the damage you took. So if you took 5 points in body and 2 points in mind, that's 2 separate rolls you have to do. You also need to note on your sheet, because sometimes you will not be in the negative and you will be in the positive, but you still took killing combat damage. So you may want to have a scrap paper that says 2 different types of boxes, and I know it's a little bit of a pain, but it really depends on your GM, so you can do whatever you want. But if you have to distinguish between killing and bashing, because it makes a difference when rolling, if it's once 24 hours or once every hour. Of course, you as your GM or you as the GM could simply just wave your hand and just say, this is a super heroic cartoon style campaign, and we're just going to do it once an hour, and that's it. Doesn't matter what type of damage. Now, if you do spend the time to do the roll in an hour, and you don't get all your points back, you still have to wait another full hour or another full 24 hours before you can do it again to get those points back. Now, Desperation Recovery. Okay, so in the comics or the movies, at that point, we'll use Superman, for example, gets all bashed to hell through walls, through, this or that, down and out, and he looks like he's dead, and all of a sudden you just hear a crumble and a rumble, and you see his fists come through, like, the rubble, and he comes out, his eyes are glowing red, and it looks like, holy crap, I thought he was going to be dead. This is what Desperation Recovery is. You spend 15 hero points at the end of each phase to see if you recover damage. You can also spend 1 hero point to revive yourself if you're in the negatives at this point, or another fallen character, such as a villain or somebody in your team that needs desperate help. And when you're doing this, if you're at the negative points, you're only bringing yourself back up to 0, so at least you stop the bleeding, or the dying, I should say. Otherwise, what you're going to do this, and this is a little bit of a pain because it took me a little while to wrap my head around this. At first, when I first started playing this game, but then I chalked it up to the results are, yeah, you're basically just a superhero. Deal with it, because why would you want to do this Desperation Recovery unless you're under 0? I mean, you could do it if you're not, but I mean, I really wouldn't advise I wouldn't advise for it as a GM when a character is up and running about. By all means, if they want to spend the hero points to do this and do it, it's fine, okay. If it's one of those situations where it's against the big bad guy at the end and they want to just bulk up or hulk up, I should say, to do it, why not? But I mean, most players don't read into the rules that far to actually want to do one of these things, and generally if they do, they only use it for negative recovery rolls, which we'll look at in just a second here, as I'm going to switch screens again. And we get back to our good old chart. Let me just flip the page here for you. So let's just say you're at -2. Now, you know what? Let's say you're at -6. And you have a body of 9. So what we're looking at here is your body of 9 is right here, under 9. The opposing is going to be your -6, which is here. Cross-referencing, You need to beat a 7 to do anything. If you go below that, no, it's not going to happen. But let's just say you do and you roll an 11, that's 2 column shifts. You're going to go flip over to the next chart, and the 9 versus the 6 is 4, 2, 8 points you'll get back, and essentially bringing you back up to 0 anyway. Or as the GM, you can decide it brings you 8 points back into the positive. It's really however you want to do it as the GM. It doesn't really matter. It's your game. And again, say you had enough points to get yourself over to the A, you would get all your points back. You can never go +1 no matter what, because you can never go higher than the attribute that you have at the current time. There's no temporary hit points type thing or temporary attribute numbers. Obviously, it's your game. If you want to do that in your game, go for it, but you can't do that. So that's really how that works, and that's how those two things work. Resting recovery and recovery rolls, that's how it works. Hopefully this will do something for you. Don't forget to like the video, comment below, let me know what you think. I need another video explaining these a little bit more. I can if you want to talk on the side. Obviously, like the video, comment, and share around so everybody sees this. Don't forget to check out the Crisis in the DC RPG podcast on anchor.fm/DC RPG for all your audio podcast needs for this wonderful game of DC Heroes. Till next time, up and away.